Breaking news, people. Kenny Pickett is going to be QB1 for the Steelers in 2024. According to Mike Tomlin, they're going to run it back with Kenny for another year. They're going to go all out on bringing in a new offensive coordinator. And they will bring in some competition for Kenny Pickett. So it's not like he's just going to be handed the keys to the Lamborghini, even though he kind of is. Because let's face it, Mason Rudolph, with him being a pending free agent, Pittsburgh probably isn't going to be willing to pay enough money to keep this guy around. I do expect for Mason Rudolph to sign a pretty hefty salary for him to be a backup quarterback somewhere with how well he played the last final games of the regular season. And he didn't look too bad against the Buffalo Bills, minus that red zone interception. Like, I felt he played pretty solidly. Kenny Pickett is not that good. All right, outside of him having the ability to step up late in games in the fourth quarter or being scrappy, playing through injuries or whatnot, he's not a great quarterback. And Mason Rudolph looked fantastic compared to how Kenny Pickett was looking. Even with, firing Matt Canada, he looked pretty good against Cincinnati, but they only scored 16 points. When Mason Rudolph was in, they were averaging over 20 with ease. So Kenny Pickett, I'm not on board with this dude as the quarterback for Pittsburgh. I really don't think he has it. Even if you do get a new offensive coordinator, who really can you get that's a highly touted offensive coordinator that's going to want to take this job? Like Eric Bieniemy, you think he would want to work with Kenny Pickett? This dude isn't that talented. What is one elite trait that Kenny Pickett has that would make anybody that has other options want to coach and call plays for the Steelers offense? He doesn't have elite mobility. He doesn't have a strong arm. He's not super athletic. He misses wide open wide receivers. Like, listen, you can put all the blame on Matt Canada all you want to for Kenny Pickett looking like a bust the last couple of years, but you can't blame Matt Canada for Kenny Pickett missing wide open wide receivers. You want to know something funny? Everybody was saying how Deontay Johnson and George Pickens were character problems and the Steelers needed to get rid of them. And all of a sudden, Mason Rudolph comes in. He can actually get them the football. He can actually throw accurate passes to them when they're wide open. And all of a sudden, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson look like they are having fun playing football again. You see, people are making it seem like maybe they just don't fuck with Kenny Pickett. I don't think that's the case. According to a lot of people closer to the organization than me and most of you guys listening to this, a lot of players really like Kenny Pickett. But the problem is, if you're just not a good quarterback and you're a wide receiver, you're not going to really be a fan of the dude who can't get you the football, especially if you're wide open. You're going to be a fan of the quarterback who can get you the football and can do it accurately and precisely. And that's what Mason Rudolph was able to do. Deontay Johnson went to bat for Mason Rudolph. Kenny Pickett, he just makes it harder to do your job as a wide receiver because you got to work extra harder because the dude isn't that accurate. And even when you are open, you don't know if he's even going to be able to get it to you. Like, I really believe that drafting Kenny Pickett was a huge mistake. And it may be an even bigger mistake than when they drafted Terrell Edmonds over Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. You see, the problem with Mike Tomlin is that he's one of those head coaches that is really good, but he has been held back due to his quarterback situation. And when you're a defensive-minded coach, you have to get the quarterback position right because you don't specialize in that area. So if your quarterback situation isn't good, it makes it harder for you to have success. Look at Robert Saleh with the New York Jets right now. I think he's a decent coach. He's no Mike Tomlin, but for the New York Jets, if you had Aaron Rodgers this year, you probably are in the playoffs. You see, Kenny Pickett, if he was the backup to start this season and Mason Rudolph started the whole entire season, then the Steelers probably would have had a chance to win the AFC North, and possibly they could have had a wild card home playoff game. But because Kenny Pickett was so bad and he's overthrowing wide open wide receivers and whatnot, and, Matt Canada got canned, you have to make some serious changes. Now you're giving Kenny Pickett the reins again. What's really going to change outside the dude calling plays? Like, yeah, the play calling can be better, and he showed some promise against, Cincinnati, but he only led the offense to 16 points. I don't see anything special in Kenny Pickett. I really don't. This dude doesn't really have any juice. And I'm not hating on him, but you guys know I was never high on Kenny Pickett to begin with. I wanted Malik Willis. And yeah, Malik Willis is worse than Kenny Pickett. I understand that. But it's just like the Steelers should have never drafted him in the first place. They probably should have just went with Mr. Trubisky if that was the case and just try to be bad enough to get a quarterback next year. But that's the problem with Mike Tomlin. He's so good of a coach that you're never going to bottom out and be in position to draft a guy like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May who can legitimately be a franchise game changer for you. Instead, you got to opt to draft guys like a Kenny Pickett. Like, Kenny Pickett was never a first-round caliber quarterback. He was overdrafted. The Steelers just felt like they needed a quarterback. Big Ben just retired, and you got to find his replacement. You got to find somebody who can fill his shoes. And Kenny Pickett, you thought he could have been that guy, but he hasn't been. He played at Pitt, so he is the hometown kid. That definitely played a factor. But even watching him at Pitt, like, the dude had that big run in the ACC championship when he fake slid, but it wasn't really an explosive run. And you just knew that his mobility in college football wasn't really going to translate to much in the NFL. And I'm going to be honest with you. Any quarterback that's wearing 2 long sleeves like Kenny Pickett is, I can't take you seriously. Like, this dude wears 2 long sleeves at quarterback. It's like he's wearing a long-ass sweater. I knew he was going to be trash as soon as I saw him with 2 long sleeves and gloves on. Like, seriously, he looks like a receiver playing quarterback. And he just doesn't look natural playing QB out there. So, I'm just kind of over it now as a Steeler fan. Like, I'm not going to say fire Mike Tomlin anymore, because we obviously know that that's not going to happen. And I'm not going to keep complaining about the quarterback situation, because it just is what it is. I'm just hoping that we can hire the right offensive coordinator. And I'm hoping that Mike Tomlin is the dude in charge of that, because I just learned today, arguing with some Steeler fans on the Bleacher Report app, that the ownership is a little bit more controlling than what many people think. I didn't know that Mike Tomlin wasn't the dude who hired Matt Canada. It was the Rooneys who apparently hired Matt Canada, and they were the dudes who fired them, apparently. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. So maybe we've given a little bit of too much flack to Mike Tomlin for decisions that we thought were his, but actually weren't. So Kenny Pickett, maybe getting a new offensive coordinator like an Eric Bieniemy could change his career trajectory. But even with a good offensive coordinator, what's going to happen when the OC does a good job and he ends up getting a head coaching opportunity elsewhere? Then what happens then? Because you see, Kenny Pickett, his potential at best is that he's a average, maybe above average quarterback. Maybe he's a top 15 quarterback. At best, you get top 12 QB play out of Kenny Pickett. But for the majority of this dude's career, he's going to be nothing better than a top 17 and top 18 quarterback. And even if he does play at the top 12 level, is that ever going to be good enough to get the Steelers to another Super Bowl? When you got a division with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and God forbid if Deshaun Watson can ever get it together in Cleveland, it's like you need to have a good quarterback to win. Look at the quarterbacks that go the furthest in the playoffs. They are the quarterbacks that are considered to be the most talented. Jalen Hurts last season, top 5 quarterback, top 3. Like Brock Purdy this season, MVP candidate. You know, he's going to be in the NFC Conference Championship game potentially. Hell, if they lose to the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love has been a top 5, top 10 quarterback this year. CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson. You need to have good quarterback play to win in today's NFL. This isn't the NFL of the 2010s or the 2000s or 1990s or 1980s when you can win with just anybody at quarterback and have great defense. For Kenny Pickett to be able to win the Super Bowl in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's coaching has to be A1. He needs to have a Super Bowl caliber roster around him when it comes to every single position. Now, he has gotten better at taking care of the football, but that's about it. And he does have the ability to raise his game in big moments, but what does it matter if you can't play good for an entire 4 quarters? You can't play for an entire 60 minutes. You only play 15 minutes of a game? That's not how you win a Super Bowl. You got to play that thing good from opening kickoff to the final whistle. Listen, like, y'all may think I'm a Kenny Pickett hater. I'm not a hater. Like, I root for every Pittsburgh Steelers player that puts on that black and gold uniform every Sunday or whenever they play. But let's just be honest, man. The people that keep defending Kenny Pickett All their only excuse is that, well, he didn't get a chance to really play a lot of games with a new OC. Well, we could say the same thing about Matt Canada. Maybe Matt Canada wouldn't have gotten fired if Mason Rudolph was at quarterback instead of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett could even hit George Pickens and Deontay Johnson when they were wide open on drag routes. Come on, man. I've seen plenty of passes that Kenny Pickett overthrow to George Pickens when he was wide open. Well, what about the drops? You want to blame him for the drops? Okay, cool. Yeah, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens had a lot of drops when Kenny Pickett was in that quarterback, but I ain't see the ball touching the grass too much when Mason Rudolph was in. Like, I don't have a problem with Kenny Pickett being the starting quarterback next year for new OC. We did invest a first-round pick into this guy. You do want to get in, or you do want to get out what you put in for him. But I just don't see it with this guy, man. I never was a big fan of his coming out. When you're playing in a city like Pittsburgh, you need to be tough, which he has that, check, but you need a strong arm, which he doesn't have, and you got to have that it factor. And Kenny Pickett just doesn't have that it factor to me. You know, like, he's not a guy who's going to galvanize the team when the game is on the line, in a sense. He's not a guy who players are going to go to war for. Like, they like him. They'll have a beer with him, but they're not going to run through a brick wall for him. I'm just not sold on Kenny Pickett. I really would like for the Steelers to move in a different direction, but obviously that's not going to happen. They're going to bring in a vet potentially. I doubt they draft a quarterback because where they're picking out in the draft, no good quarterback is going to be available. Maybe a Michael Penix, Bo Nix, or Spencer Rattler potentially, but Kenny Pickett, QB1 for the Steelers in 2024, man. Give me your thoughts about this down in the comment section down below. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not really a big fan of it.